Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title, continuing my trek through the episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond Season 6. And as you can tell from the background, still in Vegas. This, of course, is Season 6, Episode 14, Snow Day. Now, the one I saw in syndication, as I mentioned at the end of the last episode, and this is another Kathy Ann Stump episode, which name I've mentioned a couple times. She's not one of the prolific ones from what I remember, but she has written a handful of ones. Now, before I get too far into the video, just a reminder, if you want to support the channel, both the Patreon and PayPal links are down below. If you want to continuously support the channel, subscribe to the Patreon. You'll gain access to videos like this early, and you'll also be able to suggest the topics for future videos. And if you want to just do a one-off support or one-off request, go the PayPal route. Either way, your support is appreciated. Now, Snow Day. Now, in the previous episode, they mentioned something about a family trip. In this episode, we see, at the beginning, Ray and Debra getting ready to take a trip. The only difference is it looks like they decided to do separate trips, because they sent the kids off to stay with Debra's mother, and they're going on a weekend. Now, Ray's practicing his swings while Debra's, talking to the kids on the phone. You behave, or you do what Grandma tells you, and then Ray interjects, oh, you'll be sent back to this Grandma. Now, Debra looks like she's a little annoyed. You're not even packed. Amy's going to be here. I'm packed, and he has a small bag. And they have a little back and forth. Then Amy shows up, and when she walks in, we see that, oh, it's been snowing. Uh-oh, I see where this is going. And she talks about everything. And we find out in this dialogue that she and Gianni are no longer an item, which is like about time. Now, when I was watching these episodes originally, this is how I found out she and the character Gianni dated. I don't remember offhand if I'd seen an episode with Gianni yet by the time I saw this one, or if this is my first introduction to the concept of that character, but I hadn't really watched a lot of the episodes dealing with Amy and Robert's relationship. I knew that they had one, but I didn't know that where this fit in the timeline and all that. So watching it more in sequence when I got the DVDs, it's like, okay, some of this makes a little bit more sense. But I thought that something I'm going to mention later was the catalyst for them getting back together. Now, if there's one complaint about the Amy-Gianni relationship, is that most of it is off-screen. I mean, we never see them interact on screen other than when they come in to pick up Ray and Debra at the end of the episode they get together and Robert's there. That's the only time we see them on screen together as a couple. Never see them kissing or anything else like that. And then it's this. There should have probably been one episode where we saw them together as a couple proper. Maybe have jealous Robert in the background. But I can understand with how the episodes go that they didn't do that and didn't see the need to do it. And here the relationship's gone, so it is what it is. Now, because of the snow, the airport is closed, so that puts the kibosh on Ray and Debra's vacation plan, and then the power goes out. Have to channel my inner Peter Boyle there with that laugh. Everything's bad. So all three of them go across the street to see Frank and Marie, and they see they're already getting ready for everything. Marie's already got sandwiches set up. Ray has his spiced rum punch all made, which he calls liquid earplug, which leads to another one of my favorite Peter Boyle one-liners, which I don't think I put in any video yet, where he's sipping it while Marie's lecturing him, and he's like, finished or do I need to get a refill? Just the way Peter Boyle says it. It's a fun little one. Yeah, they're all talking about everything. They ask about Gianni, mainly because Robert has shown up at that point, which it seems like this is the first time they've been around each other since Amy got together with Gianni. And if there's one thing after a breakup that can be a bit awkward is being around your ex, which I can speak of from firsthand. I'm not going into the specifics, but firsthand, yeah. Certain situations or in general, it's going to vary. But you try to make it less awkward if it's a situation where you guys do have to hang out. Like here, Robert's at his parents, Jamie's there, so it's like he's going to try to make it less awkward. Of course, it doesn't stop the awkwardness because of the fact that Marie's trying to do her usual stick of like, I'm going to get them back together. Tuck in your shirt. Now, Robert does kind of see a little bit of the possibility, but he's not really trying with it. Now, at one point they decide to start dancing because they're reminiscing about past parties that Frank and Marie used to have, as Marie put it, back when people could stand Frank, and he's like, and Ray mentions that at one of these parties was one of the first times he danced with a girl, and shows off his dance move. Here I go. Well, a little bit like that, a nice little fun dance move, which is interesting considering we know Ray doesn't like dancing, but it's more accurate to say he doesn't like always dancing. He has to be in the mood for it, which I do get. Now, then Frank decides, I'm going to show you real dancing. And he puts on some jazz music, which, according to IMDb, the song that Frank puts on is Frenesy by Artie Shaw. Him and Marie dance, and it's a pretty good dance move, and then he dances with Amy, and then he dances with Debra to show off. And it's when he's dancing with Debra that the bomb drops, because she's dancing. It's like, oh, I can't believe I'm having a good time with you. And he's like, what? And then he's like, normally she doesn't really finish it, but you get the idea of what she's trying to say. Normally you're an ass. And then he grabs a jacket and walks outside. And they point out that it's mean, what he said. And then after Debra mentions she's going to get a jacket and go apologize to Frank, and she can't believe she said that, Marie lets out, I can. And then this is where the whole little dialogue in the center of the episode comes, where Marie claims, you think you're better than us. This seems to be one of those little political things they mention without getting full political, other than mentioning the fact that Debra grew up in Connecticut. She went to a private school and a fancy college. They kind of keep it a little bit like that, other than compared to her parents and them, the Barones are more lower class, which I've always said that they're like middle class, and then her parents and her are probably upper middle class. Maybe bordering on the upper class, but I'd say like upper middle class. If you want to go into the Monty Python sphere, there'd be upper middle class, something weird like that. Now, Debra does try to defend herself, but it seems like everything she says, Marie tries to throw back at her. Like when she says, I grew up in Connecticut, not Buckingham Palace, and then Marie's like, just because you thought you had to bring up Buckingham Palace only proves. And then there's this little bit of dialogue that's actually cut out of the syndication one. It's just like a quick little one for time. This is stupid. I've had enough. Oh, now we're stupid. Now, part of this, I think, stems from the fact that a couple of them have been drinking, but that's going to play more into a part with Ray. Because Debra is still defending herself like, no, this is not the case. And then Ray interjects and says that his mother's right and starts going all this and bringing up a lot of points about how she's right. And then, of course, Debra points out the obvious, like, wait, are you drunk? And I just love the way that Ray sells this. Ray sells this whole pretty good. You could definitely tell he plays a pretty convincing drunk, and he doesn't oversell it. It's just slight differences in his body language and how he actually enunciates his lines. And that is very much shown in how he says this line. Don't be preposterous. Just the way he says it and the way he's looking at Debra when he says that. And he's like, yeah, you are. And Ray keeps trying to defend his mother's point, bringing up everything weird about the Barones. All the stuff he says about Marie is true. She doesn't try to argue it because I think since Ray's defending her perspective, she's going to let him say whatever he's saying, especially if he gets Debra to admit that Marie is right. Now, it's fun when they get over to Robert because they start bringing up a lot of his quirks. Some of them we didn't know. Now, a couple of them we knew, like his fear of busboys. My favorite is good and plenties. Now, before we knew he didn't like to share them, but now apparently he separates them into goods and plenties. That is quirky. Along with not having his dollar bills facing each other because it looks like they're kissing. That's also quirky. Which I'll say, yeah, that's quirky. That's not any indication of them better. Now, eventually, in all this, Debra finally breaks down and admits that she's better, but I don't think that's really her admitting. I think it's her just saying that so everybody will just shut up. Because by that point, I think she's fed up with everything. Especially she says it after Ray starts talking about himself. Like one time when she came home and he had pizza sauce all down his chest, which as Ray puts it, wouldn't have been bad if he had been wearing a shirt or eating pizza. Now, the way he plays it sounds like he might be insinuating he might have been drunk at that time, but Ray strikes me as somebody that doesn't overly indulge. Maybe that's just because of the fact that it never comes up in conversation, mainly when they go out to eat or something like this. That strikes me as Frank being someone who drinks more than everybody else, but that's just how the characters have struck me. Now, after she finally relents, Debra goes outside and has a little chat with Frank. Now, this chat, it's a nice little heart-to-heart moment between them. And I love the way it ends, where Frank is like, I always thought it was you and me against all of them in there. You and me, we're not like them. They're loonies. Which, just hear Frank say that, it's one of those things like, they're loonies, Frank. They're loonies. But that's the reason it works. And then, of course, the epilogue scene for this episode. Perfect way to end it. Where Robert wants to switch music. And, of course, we get the song, Jungle Love. It's driving me mad. It's making me crazy, crazy. The debut of the song that eventually would become the opening song for the show. And that's just my introduction to that, because in syndication they never played the full Raymond intro with Jungle Love in it. And just the way Robert and Amy start dancing here. The way I like it, Robert goes crazy. He's like, Amy, it's Jungle Love. Remember when they played this at the policeman's ball? Amy's looking at him like this. Then all of a sudden she throws whatever she's reading down and gets up and starts dancing. And then Ray and Debra get up and start dancing. Now, the way that they played this off with those two, it comes across like they might get back together, but then again, it's only a dance. That doesn't necessitate a relationship, although there were kind of subtle hints throughout the episode that, you know, Marie's trying her usual stuff, but they never comment on it with words. It's all visual acting. Like when Frank is dancing with Debra, Marie goes, okay, Frank's dancing with Debra, I'm going to dance with you, pointing at Ray, and everyone just pair up however you like. It's just that there's a little bit of awkwardness there. Now, when I was watching this in syndication, I thought this is how they got back together, of course, but watching the rest, it's like, nope. Now, we know the next season, these two are going to get back together. And it's in one of those ones that's like, oh, just randomly. Now, I like to imagine, I know someone's going to say, headcanon, yeah, get that phrase out of here. I like to imagine that they might have had a discussion or two after the events of this, but before that, and figure like, it's not right for us right now. Or however it goes. But they should have at least had another episode somewhere where they had at least a little discussion about something. Or at least that's just the way I'm looking at it, because I'm looking at it more like from a modern continuity perspective or like a truer continuity perspective. But other than like certain threads, we all know sitcoms usually didn't carry a whole lot of continuity, more so older ones. I mean, there are certain threads that you have to continue because they're big ones, like even back in I Love Lucy, once they had the baby, little Ricky has to stay there and be involved in the storylines. It's not like you can write out little Ricky from the storylines. Everything else is kind of like a soft reset at the end of them. And even here, some of the status quo stuff goes, except for like some minor stuff. Like they'll bring up certain things when it's relevant, but other than like a couple of things here and there, like the ending of this season and the beginning of the next season is going to be a little thread. So in a couple episodes time, I'll be bringing up this point again. And then of course, things like Shamsky staying there until he just dies off screen and they never comment on it. See, they never really comment on it here. And as you all know about my thoughts about the Amy and Robert relationship, about them breaking up and getting back together too many times, and a couple seasons ago, and then this whole thing. Although on one hand, it does kind of make it seem a little bit sweeter once they do get back together, that you go from them breaking up at the beginning of season 5, her next couple appearances being sporadic, into season 5 when it's the episode where they all get together to hate on Robert. Then into the episode where she starts dating Gianni. Then this one. Then we don't see her again until her cameo at the end of the episode. And then find out in the next episode that she and Robert got back together. That. So I could see why they went that way. It's just one of those things like, yeah, it would have been interesting if they did, but I can understand why they didn't decide to comment on it then. But, it is what it is. But it is still a nice little Robert Amy moment in hindsight when you factor in all their cute little moments together. Now, we go from that, we go to a more Ray-centric one, but it is one involving him and Allie, so we get to see him be at least a semi-committed dad. And it's the introduction of his off and on again nemesis, Peggy. That's right, we're finally to the cookie episode. So this should be fun next time.